The stars witnessed everything, and they would tell this story to anyone who listened. Marcus Chun stood in the recruitment hall of the Galactic Empire's military station, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The universe watched through a million eyes as alien recruiters examined his application with their tentacles and mechanical appendages. The recruiting officer, a crystalline being from Vega Prime, glowed with skepticism. All who observed knew what the officer thought. Another primitive from that backwater planet called Earth, seeking glory among the stars. The cosmos itself seemed to lean in closer as the officer's translucent form pulsed with different colors, processing Marcus's basic information. Human, the officer's voice resonated like wind chimes in a storm. Your species has only been part of the Empire for 3 solar cycles. Most of your kind serve in logistics or communications. Why do you seek a combat position? Those who watched from beyond knew Marcus's answer before he spoke it. The man's gray eyes held storms that had seen too much, carried weight that pressed against reality itself. The observers in their distant dimensions understood that this human carried secrets darker than the void between stars. I have experience, Marcus said simply. The words fell like drops of water on still pond, creating ripples that the universe felt but could not yet understand. The recruitment hall buzzed with activity. Warriors from 100 worlds moved through the space, scaled draconians with natural armor thick as starship hulls, 4-armed Kentorians whose every limb could wield a different weapon, telepathic mindlings who could kill with a thought. They all glanced at the lone human with mixtures of amusement and pity. The watchers knew these aliens saw Marcus as fragile, soft, weak. How wrong they were, how terribly wrong. Commander Zeker entered the hall, his massive frame casting shadows that seemed to swallow light. The Thraxian warrior stood 9 feet tall, his exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian. Every being in the recruitment hall straightened at his presence. He who commanded the Empire's most elite strike force, the Void Reapers, rarely visited recruitment centers. The universe held its breath as Zekthar's compound eyes fixed on Marcus. Something passed between them, a recognition that transcended species. Warriors knew warriors, even across the vast gulf of evolution and biology. Zekthar's voice rumbled like tectonic plates grinding together. The human stepped forward. Marcus moved with economy of motion that spoke volumes to those who knew how to read such things. No wasted energy, no nervous fidgeting. Every step calculated, every breath measured. The observers from beyond time noticed how his hand never strayed far from where a weapon might rest, how his eyes tracked every being in the room while seeming to look at nothing. Your application says you have combat experience, Zekthar stated. It wasn't a question. Earth's military records show nothing exceptional. Explain. The silence that followed could have crushed stars. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Those who watched from the spaces between reality saw the moment balance on a knife's edge. Not all battles are recorded in official files, Marcus finally said. Not all wars are fought between nations. Zekthar's mandibles clicked, the Thraxian equivalent of raising an eyebrow. Around them, other recruits pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. The crystalline recruiting officer's glow shifted to curious purple. Irregular warfare? Zekthar pressed. Guerrilla tactics? Corporate conflicts? Marcus's smile held no warmth. Something like that. The watchers knew Marcus thought of shadows and alleyways, of contracts written in blood, of a life lived in the spaces between law and chaos. They saw the ghosts that followed him, invisible to all but those who observe from outside normal space-time. The Void Reapers have no use for soldiers who speak in riddles, Zekthar growled. But even as he said it, his warriors' instincts sang a different song. This human radiated danger like a star radiated heat, subtle but undeniable to those who knew how to sense it. Give me a trial, Marcus said. Any test you choose. If I fail, it'll return to Earth on the next transport. The recruitment hall fell silent. Even the constant hum of the station's life support seemed to pause. The other recruits, beings who could bench press ground vehicles, who could see in spectrums humans couldn't imagine, who had evolved on worlds that would kill an unprotected human in seconds, all turned to stare. Zekthar's compound eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement or hunger. With Thraxians, it was hard to tell the difference. "Very well," the commander said. "Tomorrow at 0600 station time. Combat Simulation Chamber 7. You'll face one of my Void Reapers in single combat. Non-lethal settings, of course." His mandibles spread in what passed for a grin among his kind. "Try not to die too quickly. It's bad for morale." As Zekthar turned to leave, he paused. "What combat classification should I list for you, human?" Marcus considered the question. The Watcher saw him soar through identities like shuffling a deck of cards: soldier, mercenary, assassin, ghost. Finally, he settled on the simplest truth. "Close-quarter specialist," he said. The commander grunted and departed. Around Marcus, alien recruits whispered in languages that human ears weren't meant to understand. They spoke of the foolish human who would be carried out of Chamber 7 in pieces, who didn't understand that the Void Reapers were the Empire's elite, that each member had been selected from warrior cultures that had evolved combat into art and science over millions of years. Marcus found himself assigned to temporary quarters, a small room with atmosphere controls that could accommodate most oxygen-breathing species. As he settled in for the night, the universe watched him remove his jacket. Scars covered his arms and torso like a roadmap of violence. Knife wounds, bullet holes, burns from weapons both primitive and advanced. Each mark told a story that the official records would never acknowledge. He sat on the edge of the narrow bunk and pulled out a small photograph from his wallet. The image showed a woman and a young girl, both smiling at the camera. The Watcher saw how his fingers trembled slightly as he traced their faces, saw how his eyes went soft for just a moment before hardening again like cooling steel. Marcus Chun had not come to the stars seeking glory or adventure. He had come seeking distance from ghosts that haunted him, seeking purpose in serving something greater than the shadow wars he'd fought on Earth. The Empire offered a chance to use his skills for something noble, something clean, but the universe knew better. It knew that some stains could never be washed clean, that some skills once learned could never be forgotten. The Empire thought they were recruiting a soldier. They were wrong. They were recruiting a weapon. As Marcus lay down to sleep, his breathing immediately fell into the rhythm of someone who had learned to rest while remaining alert. Even in dreams, his hands clenched and unclenched, fighting battles that existed only in memory. The Watchers retreated to their spaces between seconds, carrying with them the knowledge of what was to come. Tomorrow, the Galactic Empire would learn why humans, despite their soft skin and limited senses, had survived on a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. Tomorrow, they would learn why Earth's children were not prey, but predators who had learned to hide their fangs. The stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small drama playing out in the recruitment station. But those who existed beyond the stars, who saw all possibilities spreading out like fractal patterns in the cosmic web, they knew the truth. The Galactic Empire had just recruited its most dangerous soldier, and they didn't even know it yet. Combat Simulation Chamber 7 thrummed with barely contained energy, its walls lined with force field projectors and holographic emitters. The Watchers from beyond space and time observed as beings from across the Empire gathered in the observation deck. Word had spread through the station like wildfire. A human challenged the Void Reapers. Marcus entered the chamber at exactly 0600, wearing the basic training suit provided to all recruits. The fabric adapted to his body temperature and movement, but offered no armor, no technological advantages. Around him, the air shimmered as the chamber's systems came online. The observation deck filled with whispers in a dozen languages. Credits changed hands as bets were placed. The odds heavily favored the match, ending in less than 30 seconds. Some wagered on whether the human would survive at all, even with non-lethal settings. Commander Zekthar stood at the center of the observation platform, his massive arms crossed. Beside him, officers from various military divisions had gathered. The Watchers noticed how some leaned forward with predatory interest, while others appeared bored, expecting nothing more than a brief entertainment. From the opposite end of the chamber, a figure emerged. The Void Reaper wore no ceremonial armor, no rank insignia. She moved with the fluid grace of a born predator. Vera and I, of the Ashanti Highlands, the observers knew, though the crowd saw only another alien warrior. The Ashanti evolved on a world where gravity fluctuated wildly due to exotic mineral deposits. Their bodies adapted to constant change, developing muscle fibers that could adjust density in microseconds, bones that could flex without breaking, and a nervous system that processed movement at speeds that made them seem to teleport short distances. Vera and I stood 7 feet tall, her skin a deep purple that shifted to near black in the chamber's lighting. Her arms ended in hands that could crush stone or perform surgery with equal ease. Her eyes, 6 of them arranged in perfect symmetry, studied Marcus with the dispassionate interest of a scientist examining a specimen. Human, her voice carried across the chamber like silk wrapped around steel. I will make this quick. There is no shame in yielding. Marcus rolled his shoulders, loosening muscles that the watchers could see were already perfectly relaxed. He had done this dance so many times before, in so many places, against so many opponents who thought him weak. Weapons, he asked simply. Varen, a gesture to racks that rose from the chamber floor. Training weapons of every description, staves, blades, energy batons, projectile launchers with stun rounds. The Ashanti warriors selected a pair of curved blades, their edges glowing with a blue light that indicated non-lethal charge. A touch would deliver pain, but no permanent damage. Marcus walked to the rack slowly, deliberately. His fingers traced over exotic weapons designed for anatomies he didn't possess, past energy weapons that would have given him range advantage, until he stopped at something that made the crowd murmur in confusion. He picked up a simple metal rod. No charge, no special properties. Just a length of reinforced training alloy about the size of a human forearm. Is the human mocking us? Someone in the observation deck whispered. Varenai's 6 eyes narrowed. Among her people, choosing an inferior weapon was either the highest form of insult or the mark of a master so confident they needed no advantages. She activated her blades with a thought, their hum filling the chamber. The combat zone materialized around them. Holographic obstacles, varying terrain, environmental hazards that would test adaptability. Standard protocol for Void Reaper trials. The Watchers saw Marcus catalog every detail in the span of 2 heartbeats, his mind already calculating angles, distances, possibilities. A klaxon sounded. The match began. Vera and I moved first, crossing 15 meters in what seemed like a single step. Her blades carved patterns in the air that would have overwhelmed any normal opponent's ability to track. She flowed like water, struck like lightning, each movement perfect efficiency honed by evolution and training. Marcus wasn't there when she arrived. He had shifted minutely, a bare minimum of movement that carried him just outside her strike zone. The metal rod in his hand moved in a small arc, deflecting one blade while his body positioning made the other miss by centimeters. Surprise flickered across Varenai's features for exactly 0.3 seconds before she adjusted. Her next attack came from 4 angles simultaneously, her extra arms providing options no human could match. The crowd expected Marcus to retreat, to buy time, to play defensive until the inevitable. Instead, he stepped into the attack. The Watchers saw time slow to crystalline clarity as Marcus moved between the blades like smoke through a forest. His rod connected with Varenai's lower right wrist, a tap that looked gentle but carried precisely calculated force. Her grip loosened involuntarily, the blade spinning away. She compensated instantly, her other 3 arms converging on him. But Marcus had already begun his next movement, the rod now striking at her knee, her elbow, her shoulder in a sequence that spoke of years studying anatomy, of knowing exactly where to apply pressure to create maximum effect with minimum force. Varenai leaped back, creating distance. 3 of her 6 eyes now tracked him with newfound wariness. She began to move differently, no longer the casual predator toying with prey. The Watchers recognized the shift. she now saw him as a genuine opponent. "Interesting," she said, her voice carrying a note of respect. "You've studied Ashani physiology." Marcus's expression remained neutral. "I study many things." They circled each other, two predators taking measure. The crowd had gone silent, credits forgotten in hands, as they watched something they hadn't expected, an actual fight. Vera and I attacked again, but this time she incorporated the environment. She bounced off holographic walls, used obstacles to change trajectory mid-flight, came at Marcus from angles that should have been impossible to defend. Her remaining blade became a web of light, her free hands reaching to grapple, to crush, to overwhelm. Marcus moved through it all like he was dancing to music only he could hear. Never where attacks expected him to be, always positioned so that Vera and I's own momentum worked against her. His rod struck pressure points with surgical precision, never enough to seriously harm with the training safety protocols active, but enough to disrupt, to slow, to frustrate. The watcher saw what the crowd was beginning to realize. Marcus wasn't fighting like a human. He wasn't trying to match Vera and I's strength or speed because he knew he couldn't. Instead, he fought like water wearing down stone, like wind reshaping mountains. He fought with the accumulated knowledge of a species that had learned to kill things larger, faster, and stronger than themselves since they first picked up rocks and sharpened sticks. 5 minutes passed. 10. Vera and I's breathing grew heavier, while Marcus maintained the same steady rhythm. She had expended energy in explosive movements, while he had conserved, redirected, used her own force against her. In the observation deck, Commander Zekthar leaned forward. His compound eyes tracked every movement, and the watchers could see his warrior's mind reassessing, recalculating, recognizing something the others hadn't yet grasped. This human didn't fight like a soldier. He fought like a survivor. Vera and I changed tactics. She threw her remaining blade aside and rushed Marcus with all four arms spread wide, seeking to grapple. In close quarters, her advantages should have been overwhelming. More limbs, greater reach, superior strength. Marcus dropped the rod and met her charge. What happened next occurred too fast for most of the observers to follow. The watchers saw it all. Marcus using Vera and I's momentum to guide her past him, his hands finding precise points on her arms that made her muscles spasm involuntarily. He moved inside her guard, became part of her motion, directed her energy into the ground with devastating efficiency. When the movement ended, Vera and I was on the floor, Marcus's knee on her spine, her four arms locked in a position that would have been a submission hold if not for the safety protocols. She struggled, her strength enough to lift ground vehicles, but the angle gave her no leverage. Physics itself had become Marcus's ally. "Yield," Marcus said quietly. Vera and I continued to struggle for several seconds before her body relaxed. "I yield," she said, her voice carrying bewilderment and something else, respect. Marcus released her immediately, stepping back and offering a hand to help her up. She took it, her 6 eyes studying him with new interest. The chamber fell silent. Then, someone on the observation deck started a slow clap. Others joined, until the sound echoed through the space. They had expected to see a human crushed, humiliated, shown the vast gulf between Earth's children and the galaxy's true warriors. Instead, they had seen something else entirely. Commander Zekthar entered the chamber, his massive frame dwarfing both combatants. He studied Marcus for a long moment, and the watchers saw him looking past the unassuming exterior to something darker, more dangerous. "Where did you really learn to fight, human?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Earth teaches harsh lessons, Commander. We've had longer to learn them than most realize." Vera and I flexed her arms, working out muscle kinks. "He fights like no species I've encountered. Not trying to dominate or overpower. He fights to survive," Zekthar finished. "He fights to survive at any cost." The Thraxian commander's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Show me your service record again, Marcus Chun. The real one this time." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. The watchers knew what it contained. Not the sanitized version he'd submitted initially, but fragments of truth. Enough to hint at the shadows he'd lived in without revealing their full depth. Zekthar inserted the chip into a reader on his arm. His compound eyes scanned the data, and, with each line, his posture shifted. The other officers in the observation deck noticed, pressing closer to see what had caught their commander's attention. Numbers scrolled past. Not official military engagements, but conflicts with classification codes that meant black operations, deniable actions, wars that existed only in sealed files, and dead men's memories. And next to each entry, a simple notation, mission complete. No details, no elaboration, just a success rate that approached statistical impossibility. Interesting, Zekthar said finally. Your government's shadow conflicts, corporate wars, criminal syndicates. He looked up, and your confirmed elimination count. Marcus said nothing. The file is corrupted there, Zekthar continued. The number keeps changing, rising. His mandibles spread in what might have been a smile, as if it's still being updated. Silence stretched between them. Vera and I looked between the two, her warrior's instincts suddenly on edge. Other Void Reapers had begun to gather, drawn by something in their commander's manner. I came here to serve, Marcus said simply, to use what I know for something better than what I've done. And what have you done? Zekthar asked. What was necessary? The two warriors studied each other, and the Watchers saw an understanding pass between them. Zekthar had his own shadows, his own necessary actions that kept the Empire safe from threats its citizens never knew existed. Report to Void Reaper Training Bay at 0800, Zekthar said finally. We'll see if you can maintain that performance against multiple opponents. Commander, one of the other officers interjected. Regulations require full background verification before I'll take responsibility, Zekthar cut him off. Sometimes, Lieutenant, we need soldiers who understand that war isn't always about honor and glory. Sometimes it's about doing terrible things so others can sleep safely. He turned back to Marcus. But understand this, human. The Void Reapers are not assassins or shadows. We are the Empire's blade, but we strike in the light. Can you adapt to that? Marcus nodded slowly. I can learn. As the crowd began to disperse, still buzzing with excitement over the unexpected outcome, Vera and I approached Marcus. That technique you used, she said, when you locked my arms. I've never encountered it before. It's called jujitsu, Marcus replied. An old earth art. We developed it because humans aren't the strongest or fastest. We had to find other ways. Would you teach me? Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. In exchange, you show me how you move like that. The micro-teleportation. Vera and I's face split in what her species used for a grin. Agreed. Though I should warn you, it took my people 50,000 years of evolution to develop. You might find it challenging. I've learned harder things, Marcus said quietly. As they walked toward the exit together, the Watchers pulled back their perspective, seeing the ripples beginning to spread. One human had just demonstrated that Earth's children were more dangerous than appearances suggested. Word would spread through the military, through the Empire. But the Watchers saw further still. They saw the missions to come, the moments when Marcus Chen's particular skills would mean the difference between victory and defeat. They saw alien warriors learning human techniques, saw tactical doctrines reshaping around the concept that the weakest-seeming opponent might be the most dangerous. And in the quiet of his quarters that night, they saw Marcus pull out the photograph again. Wife and daughter, smiling in ignorance of what he'd done to keep them safe, of the blood he'd spilled in wars they'd never know existed. I'm trying to be better, he whispered to the image. For you. The universe listened and recorded as it always did. Tomorrow, Marcus Chun would begin training with the Void Reapers. He would learn their ways, and they would learn his. The Empire would gain a weapon unlike any they'd had before. But first, he had to survive the full training. And when the Void Reapers eventually saw his complete service record, his true kill count, the Watchers knew that would be when the real story began. The Void Reaper training facility existed in a pocket dimension adjacent to real space, a marvel of engineering that allowed time, to flow differently within its boundaries. The Watchers observed as Marcus Chun completed his third week of training, noting how the other recruits had stopped viewing him as an oddity and started seeing him as an enigma. Physical training that pushed xenobiological limits, tactical scenarios that required thinking in 4 dimensions, weapon systems that drew power from exotic particles. Marcus absorbed it all with the quiet intensity of someone who had spent a lifetime learning to adapt or die. The observers from beyond time saw him filing away every lesson, every technique, building an arsenal that already surpassed what most soldiers accumulated in a lifetime. But today would be different. Today, Commander Zekthar had called for full disclosure. The command staff gathered in a secure briefing room, its walls lined with dampening fields that prevented any form of surveillance. Even the Watchers had to focus harder to peer through the interference, reality blurring at the edges as competing technologies clashed. "I've received the complete file," Zekthar announced, his massive frame casting shadows that seemed to have too many angles. "The human's full service record, unredacted, verified through channels that don't officially exist." Around the table sat the Void Reaper senior staff, beings who had seen combat across 100 worlds, who had fought in wars that reshaped galactic borders. The Watchers knew each of their stories, their kills, their moments of triumph and failure. Lieutenant Commander Thex, an insectoid hierarch whose compound eyes could process information at superhuman speeds. Major Corvin, a silicon-based crystalline whose body could withstand direct plasma fire. Captain Zachal, a gaseous entity contained in a mobility suit, capable of infiltrating any environment. And Varanai, recently promoted to training instructor, who had spent every evening learning human combat technique for Marcus, while teaching him to see violence as art rather than necessity. "Display it," Thex clicked, his mandibles expressing what humans would recognize as skepticism. "Let us see what has our commander so intrigued." Zekthar activated the holographic display. Numbers began to scroll. The Watcher saw the exact moment when skepticism turned to disbelief, when disbelief became something approaching awe, tinged with horror. The first section covered conventional military service. 3 years in Earth's special forces, operations in territories most humans pretended didn't exist. Kill count, 47. Respectable for a human soldier, nothing exceptional by galactic standards. The second section began the descent. Private military contractor, the sanitized term for mercenary. Corporate extractions, hostile takeovers that involved actual hostility. Targets eliminated in boardrooms and back alleys with equal efficiency. Kill count, 186. The numbers started to blur, some marked as estimates because bodies were never found. The third section made even hardened Void Reapers shift uncomfortably. Government wet work, the kind that didn't exist in any official capacity. Assassinations that prevented wars, eliminations that started them, removal of individuals whose continued existence threatened carefully maintained balances of power. Kill count, 341. Confirmed. The actual number was listed as ongoing evaluation. But the fourth section was where comprehension began to fail. Criminal organizations? Corvin's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. "These aren't military targets. Read the details," Zekthar commanded. The room fell silent as they absorbed the information. A human trafficking ring dismantled not through legal channels, but through systematic elimination of every member from street level to leadership. A drug cartel that had murdered a prosecutor's family, subsequently finding its entire command structure dead within 72 hours. A terrorist cell planning to release bioweapons in populated areas, stopped only because someone had hunted them through 6 countries and 3 continents, leaving no survivors to try in court. Kill count, 1,247. And rising because some of these organizations still had remnants being hunted. "This is impossible." Zachal's gaseous form swirled in agitation. "No single human could." "Look at the verification codes," Zekthar interrupted. "Cross-referenced through 7 different intelligence agencies. Confirmed by forensic analysis, witness accounts where they exist, and surveillance data that was supposed to be destroyed." Vera and I leaned forward, her 6 eyes focusing on a particular entry. This one, the Kozlov Syndicate. They had over 300 soldiers, military-grade weapons, connections in Earth's government. It says here one man dismantled their entire operation in 6 weeks. Because they took something they shouldn't have, Zekthar said quietly. Read the subsection. The details were sparse but chilling. A kidnapping gone wrong. A young girl taken to be sold. The girl was recovered alive after 72 hours. What happened to her captors took the remaining weeks to complete, each death more creatively brutal than the last. A message written in blood that certain lines should never be crossed. The child? Fex asked, though he suspected the answer. Her name? Sarah Chun, Zekthar confirmed. His daughter. The silence that followed had weight, substance. The watchers saw understanding dawn on alien faces, the recognition of a primal truth that transcended species, threatened someone's offspring, and civilization becomes a thin veneer over something much older and darker. The final count? Major Corvin asked, though the number glowed before them all. 2,841 confirmed kills, Zekthar said, with an additional 400 to 600 probable, but unverified, making him potentially the single deadliest human in their species' recorded history. And he's not even 40 years old yet. No wonder he fights like he does, Vera and I murmured. Every movement calculated for maximum lethality, minimum exposure. He doesn't fight to win. He fights to ensure his enemies never fight again. Captain Zaychal's gaseous form darkened. This isn't a soldier. This is a weapon that happens to be shaped like a man. Yes, Zekthar agreed. The question is whether such a weapon can be aimed at the Empire's enemies rather than turned against us. You're actually considering keeping him? Fex's wings buzzed in agitation. Commander, with respect, this human is exactly what we need, Zekthar finished. The galaxy grows more dangerous each cycle. Pirates with technology that matches our fleet. Terrorist cells that span systems. Threats that conventional military doctrine cannot address. Sometimes, we need someone who understands that war isn't always about honor. It's about winning, Vera and I said softly, remembering something Marcus had told her during training. He said humans learned early that the survivor writes the history, not the one who fought honorably. But can we trust him? Corvin's crystalline structure harmonized with worry. A being with that much blood on their hands, with those skills, what happens if he decides the Empire is his enemy? Zekthar stood, his full height making the reinforced ceiling seem low. Then, we better ensure he never has reason to reach that conclusion. He paused, studying each of his officers. I'm assigning him to a probationary position with the Reapers. Full combat duty, but under close observation. Vera and I, you'll be his partner and handler. Commander, you've trained with him most, Zekthar continued. You understand his methods better than the others. More importantly, he seems to respect you. That's rare, according to his psychological profile. The Watchers saw Vera and I process this, remembering evenings spent learning human martial arts, conversations about philosophy, and purpose between beings who had evolved on different worlds, but understood the weight of taking lives. There's something else, Zekthar added. Intelligence has intercepted communications from the Hegemony Syndicate. They're planning something major in the Outer Rim. Slave raids, resource theft, the usual, but on a scale we haven't seen before. First mission for our human will be stopping them. You want to unleash him on the Hegemony? Fex clicked in what might have been amusement. They have over 10,000 soldiers spread across 12 systems. Then, it will be a fair fight, Zekthar replied, and the Watchers couldn't tell if he was joking. Later, Marcus stood in the armory, examining the weapons available to Void Reapers. Energy lances that could pierce capital ship armor, plasma casters that turn matter to superheated gas, graviton hammers that could crush tanks to the size of beverage containers. He picked up a simple combat knife, testing its balance. Really? Vera and I said from behind him. With all of this available, you choose a blade? Tools break, Marcus replied. Ammunition runs out. Energy cells deplete. But a knife? A knife is just physics and purpose. It never fails unless you do. She moved to stand beside him, noting how he automatically positioned himself to maintain sight lines to all entrances. After 3 weeks, she had learned to read his paranoia as what it truly was, survival instinct honed far beyond what most beings ever developed. "The commander showed us your file," she said. Marcus's hand stilled on the knife for exactly 1 heartbeat before resuming its inspection. "And 2,841 confirmed," she said. "How do you carry that?" He was quiet for so long the watchers thought he might not answer. When he spoke, his voice carried exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. "You don't carry it. It carries you. Every face, every name when I learned them, every moment when I could have chosen differently." He set the knife down carefully. "But if I hadn't, how many more would have died? How many innocents would those 2,841 have gone on to kill? Is that how you justify it?" "I don't justify it," Marcus said. "I accept it. There's a difference." Vera and I studied him with all 6 eyes. "The Hegemony Syndicate. They have 10,000 soldiers." "I know. You're not concerned?" Marcus finally looked at her directly, and she saw something in his eyes that made her predator instincts scream warnings. Not madness, not bloodlust, but purpose refined to an edge sharper than any blade. 10,000 soldiers who chose to profit from suffering," he said, "who wake up each day and decide that credits are worth more than lives, who see people as commodities." His voice never rose above conversational volume, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "No, I'm not concerned. The commander wants me to be your partner," Vera and I said. "To watch you. To stop me if necessary," Marcus corrected. "I understand. It's what I would do. Can you work with that? Knowing I might have to put you down if you go too far." Marcus smiled, and it was neither warm nor cold, simply honest. "Vera and I've been waiting for someone to stop me for 15 years, either by bullet or purpose. You offer the second option. That's novel." She extended one of her 4 hands. "Partners, then? Until you give me reason otherwise?" He shook it, his grip firm but not challenging. "Partners. And Vera and if I do go too far, don't hesitate. Don't let me become the monster I hunt." The watchers pulled back as the 2 warriors continued their preparation, seeing the threads of fate weaving tighter. The Galactic Empire had gained a weapon unlike any in their arsenal, but weapons cared nothing for who wielded them. They only cared about cutting. In the depths of space, the Hegemony Syndicate continued their preparations, unaware that death had joined the Void Reapers. Their 10,000 soldiers felt secure in their numbers, their fortifications, their reputation for brutality that kept systems in line through fear. They had no concept of what was coming. The Watchers did. They saw the future spreading out in fractal patterns of violence and justice, of a human who had learned to be death incarnate, trying to find redemption among the stars. They saw alien warriors learning that humans were not weak, but had instead weaponized their weakness, turned every disadvantage into a lesson in creative solutions. They saw the moment approaching when the Galactic Empire would realize they hadn't recruited a soldier. They had recruited humanity's answer to the question, what happens when you push a species too far? The answer was Marcus Chun, and his kill count was still rising. The Hegemony Syndicate's fortress moon of Kalos, 7 hung in space like a cancer made manifest, its surface bristling with weapons emplacements and shield generators. The Watchers from beyond time observed as a single stealth shuttle approached through the cosmic dark, carrying death in human form. Inside the cramped vessel, 6 Void Reapers performed final equipment checks. Commander Zekthar had assigned his best for this mission, a surgical strike to eliminate Hegemony leadership and destabilize their operation before the main fleet arrived. What he hadn't told them was that this mission served a secondary purpose, evaluating Marcus Chun under combat conditions. The human sat motionless in his combat suit, a piece of armor that looked almost primitive compared to his teammates' powered exoskeletons. No energy shields, no strength amplification, just adaptive plating and a heads-up display. The Watchers saw what the others missed. Marcus had modified the suit himself, adding hidden compartments, backup weapons, and redundant systems. He prepared for betrayal and equipment failure with equal thoroughness. Insertion in 5 minutes, Vera and I announced from the pilot's seat. Her 6 eyes tracked multiple displays, while 2 of her 4 arms managed the shuttle stealth systems. Perimeter scans show standard patrols. They're not expecting us. Fex checked his plasma rifle for the 4th time, nervous energy making his wings twitch. 10,000 soldiers on that moon. Even if we achieve complete surprise, the math is not favorable. The math is irrelevant. Marcus spoke for the first time in 2 hours. Soldiers are only dangerous if they're organized. Cut the head and the body flails. Spoken like a true assassin, Corvin rumbled, his crystalline form already beginning to harden for combat. Spoken like someone who understands warfare, Marcus corrected mildly. Would you prefer we fight 10,000 individually? Captain Zachal's gaseous form swirled in his containment suit. The human has a point, though I suspect his methods will be instructive. The final member of their team, a rookie reaper named Yarrick from the amphibian world of Hydros, watched Marcus with barely concealed fascination. The Watcher saw his thoughts. Here was the human with the impossible kill count, sitting among them like violence given form and consciousness. Remember, Vera and I said, primary targets are the hegemony's command staff, Warlord Gresh and his lieutenants. Secondary objectives include their slave processing centers and weapons depots. We have 6 hours before the fleet arrives. Understood, came the chorus of acknowledgments. Marcus remained silent, and the Watchers saw him running through different scenarios, calculating odds, preparing for every contingency. In his mind, the mission had already begun, and he was 3 steps ahead of the present moment. The shuttle touched down in a maintenance hangar, its stealth systems having fooled the automated defenses. As the team disembarked, they moved with practiced precision, each member covering assigned sectors. All except Marcus, who seemed to drift along with them, while somehow always being exactly where he needed to be. The first hegemony patrol never knew what killed them. The Watchers saw Marcus move between the 6 guards like a whisper of mortality, his knife finding gaps in armor that shouldn't have existed. No energy discharge to trigger alarms, no screams to alert others. Just 6 bodies cooling on the hangar floor, arranged to appear as if they were resting. Efficient, Fex admitted grudgingly. No guastid motion. They penetrated deeper into the facility, following layout data stolen by Empire intelligence. Twice more they encountered patrols. The first time, Vera and I watched Marcus work and understood why his kill count climbed so high. He didn't fight. He simply removed obstacles with the emotional investment of someone clearing debris from a path. The second patrol proved more challenging. 20 hegemony soldiers in powered armor, conducting a sweep of the sector. Too many to eliminate quietly. Or so the team thought. Take cover, Marcus whispered. 60 seconds. Before anyone could protest, he vanished into the shadows. The Watchers tracked him as he moved through maintenance passages, ventilation systems, gaps between walls that no one else would have noticed. He emerged behind a patrol like a nightmare made real. The first soldier died with a molecular cord around his throat. The second found a knife piercing the one vulnerable spot where his helmet met neck armor. Marcus used the falling body as a shield, appropriating the soldier's weapon to cut down 3 more before they could react. Panic set in. The patrol scattered, seeking cover, calling for backup. But Marcus had already moved, was already among them, turning their formation into chaos. He killed with stolen weapons, improvised tools, his bare hands when necessary. Each death calculated to create maximum psychological impact on survivors. When the Void Reapers emerged from cover 47 seconds later, 17 bodies littered the corridor. 3 survivors huddled behind an overturned supply crate, their weapons discarded, eyes wide with terror behind their visors. Marcus stood among the carnage, breathing steady, not a drop of blood on his armor despite the charnel house around him. He looked at the survivors with the same expression someone might wear while solving a puzzle. You have 2 options, he told them, his voice carrying despite its soft volume. Run back to your barracks and Tell everyone what you saw here. Tell them death walks these halls. Tell them the Empire has sent something worse than soldiers. Create panic. Spread fear. Make them doubt. He paused, letting the words sink in. Or die here. Choose. They ran. The Watchers saw them stumbling over each other in their haste to escape, and knew the psychological warfare had begun. Within an hour, rumors would spread through the hegemony ranks. Fear would do half the Reaper's work for them. That was... Yarrick struggled for words. You let them go. Dead soldiers are just statistics, Marcus explained, already moving toward their objective. Terrified soldiers are weapons aimed at their own side. As they progressed, the team's dynamic shifted. Where before they had treated Marcus as an unknown quantity, now they began deferring to his expertise. When they reached a checkpoint that should have required a firefight, Marcus disappeared for 3 minutes and returned with security codes. When they encountered a heavily fortified position, he produced explosives from somewhere and brought the ceiling down on the defenders. The Watchers saw Vera and I studying him, recognizing the transformation. This wasn't the controlled instructor from the training halls. This was the weapon fully deployed, every skill honed, over 2,841 kills brought to bear. They reached the command center's outer perimeter, where things became complicated. Hundreds of hegemony soldiers, alert and ready. The panic Marcus had seeded worked against them here. The facility was on high alert, commanders trying to restore order. Ideas. Zekthar's voice crackled through their comms. The commander monitored from orbit, ready to extract them if necessary. Give me 10 minutes, Marcus said. And ZHL, the gaseous being swirled. What do you need me for? You can survive in vacuum, correct? And interface with their computer systems? Yes, but Marcus was already moving, gesturing for ZHL to follow. The others watched them disappear into a maintenance shaft. 8 minutes later, alarms began screaming throughout the facility. Environmental breach warnings, atmosphere venting alerts, catastrophic system failures, cascading one after another. The Watchers saw what Marcus had done. Used ZHL to access systems no solid being could reach, creating targeted decompressions that forced evacuations, channeled enemies into kill zones, turned the station's own infrastructure into a weapon. In the chaos, 6 Void Reapers carved through disrupted defenses like a monomolecular blade through tissue paper. Vera and I found herself fighting alongside Marcus, watching him flow from one kill to the next with terrible grace. He fought without hatred or passion, just pure purpose, and somehow that made it worse. They burst into the command center to find Warlord Gresh waiting with his personal guard, 50 of the hegemony's best killers, armed with weapons banned by 3 different galactic conventions. So, the Warlord growled, his 4 arms hefting a plasma cannon that could vaporize a ground vehicle. The Empire sends 6 to face the hegemony? You will make fine examples. Marcus stepped forward, and the Watchers saw him cataloging every detail. Guard positions, weapon types, environmental factors, the slight tremor in one lieutenant's hand that suggested nerve damage, the way another favored his left side. Warlord Gresh, Marcus said conversationally, as if they were meeting at a social function. I've read your file. 17 systems enslaved, 43 worlds stripped of resources, approximately 2 million deaths attributed to your operations. And, proud of everyone, Gresh laughed, his tusks gleaming. What of it, human? Do you think to judge me? No, Marcus replied. I'm just calculating interest. The battle erupted like a thunderstorm breaking. Energy beams split the air, explosions shook the deck, bodies moved in lethal ballet. The Void Reapers fought as they had been trained, with skill, honor, and devastating effectiveness. Marcus fought like something else entirely. He killed guards with their own weapons, turned their formations against each other, used bodies as shields, and weapons with equal facility. The Watchers saw him processing combat like a computer running equations, each movement solving for maximum lethality. When a plasma burst should have vaporized him, he was already moving, the guard who fired finding his own weapon reversed and discharged into his chest. When 3 enemies coordinated their attack, Marcus introduced chaos that made them eliminate each other. Yarrick took a blast to the shoulder, crying out. Marcus appeared beside him, eliminated his attackers, and dragged him to cover in one fluid sequence. No words, no comfort, just practical preservation of an allied asset. The tide turned when Marcus reached the warlord's position. Gresh laughed, training his massive cannon on the human. You think to challenge me in single combat? I who have killed thousands. No, Marcus said, producing something from his belt. I think to end you efficiently. The micro-explosive attached to Gresh's cannon detonated, taking the warlord's upper arms with it. As he screamed, Marcus moved in, knife finding the gaps in armor with surgical precision. Kidney equivalents, major arteries, nerve clusters. Each strike designed to cause maximum pain while preventing quick death. 2 million, Marcus said quietly, continuing his work. That's a lot of interest. The remaining guards tried to save their leader, but the other Void Reapers cut them down. Soon, only the sound of Gresh's dying gasps filled the command center. Marcus knelt beside the warlord, studying him with the detachment of a scientist observing a specimen. Your organization will collapse within days. Your slaves will be freed. Your legacy will be a footnote warning others against similar actions. He paused. Was it worth it? Gresh tried to speak, but only blood emerged. Marcus watched him die with the same expression he might were watching paint dry. When it was over, the command center resembled an abattoir. The Void Reapers stood among the carnage, processing what they had witnessed. In 6 hours, they had eliminated hegemony leadership and crippled an organization that had plagued the Empire for decades. The cost: 1 wounded Reaper and approximately 300 enemy dead, over half attributed to 1 human. Mission complete, Vera and I reported to command, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. As they prepared for extraction, Yarrick approached Marcus despite his wounded shoulder. The way you fight, it's not like anything in our training. Marcus secured his weapons, movements automatic after years of practice. Your training assumes both sides want to survive. That changes the nature of combat. And you don't care about survival? I care about completion, Marcus corrected. Survival is just a useful side effect. The shuttle ride back was silent, each Reaper processing what they had experienced. The Watchers saw their thoughts, respect mixing with wariness, admiration tempered by the recognition that they sat beside something that wore the shape of a man, but thought like a weapon. In his debriefing, Commander Zekthar reviewed the footage captured by their armor cameras. He watched Marcus work with the eye of a professional, seeing patterns and techniques that would be studied in Void Reaper training for years to come. Your evaluation? He asked his senior staff. He's everything his file suggested, Thex admitted. Lethal beyond measure, tactically brilliant, and completely without hesitation. He saved Yarrick, Varanai added. Risked himself for a teammate he barely knows. Not risk, Corbin corrected. Calculation. He preserved a combat asset. Does the motivation matter if the result is the same? ZHL wondered. Zekthar leaned back in his chair, its reinforced frame groaning. The real question is whether we can trust him to remain pointed at our enemies. I believe we can, Vera and I said firmly. He's not a rabid animal. He's a precision instrument. As long as we provide worthy targets, he'll serve. And when we run out of worthy targets? Thex asked. Silence answered him. The Watcher saw them all thinking the same thought. What do you do with a weapon that has spent so long cutting that it knows no other purpose? In his quarters, Marcus sat on his bunk, staring at the photograph of his family. The Watcher saw his hands, steady as stone during combat, trembling slightly now. 2962, he whispered to the image. Still rising. A knock at his door interrupted his solitude. Vera and I entered, carrying 2 containers of what passed for alcohol among her people. Thought you might want company, she said, offering 1 container. Marcus accepted it, making room for her to sit. They drank in silence for a while, 2 warriors who understood that some experiences couldn't be processed with words. They're afraid of me now, Marcus said eventually. Your team. Yes, Vera and I agreed, seeing no point in lying. But they also respect you. You saved Yarrick, completed the mission, showed them techniques they've never imagined. I showed them what humans really are, Marcus corrected. Not the weak newcomers they expected, but the persistent predators who climbed to the top of their food chain through cunning and brutality. Is that what you think you are? Just brutality given form. Marcus was quiet for so long that the Watchers thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice carried exhaustion deeper than any physical fatigue. I'm what my species needed me to become. The thing that hunts the things that hunt us. He took another drink. But maybe here among the stars I can be something else. Eventually. What would you want to be? Obsolete, Marcus said immediately. I want to reach a day where the galaxy doesn't need someone like me anymore. Vera and I studied him with all 6 eyes. And until then, I'll do what I do best. He raised his container in a mock toast. Remove obstacles to that better future. One corpse at a time. They drank to that. 2 killers hoping for redemption among the stars. The Watchers pulled back their perspective, seeing the ripples spreading through the Empire. Word of the hegemony's fall spread quickly, carried by survivors who spoke in whispers of the human who killed like death itself. Other criminal organizations took notice. Some dug deeper into their holes, hoping to avoid attention. Others began hiring more security, preparing for war against an enemy they didn't understand. They all made the same mistake. They thought in terms of soldiers and battles of numbers and strength. They didn't understand that humanity had sent them something different. The Empire had welcomed the human fighter. They just hadn't realized his kill count was still growing, and would continue to grow until the galaxy no longer needed monsters to fight monsters. The Watchers knew that day was still far away. They saw the conflicts to come, the enemies who would learn too late that humans were not prey, but the species that had turned killing into science and survival into art. Marcus Chen's war had only just begun. 6 months after the hegemony's fall, the Watchers observed as the galaxy adapted to a new reality. Criminal syndicates that had operated with impunity for centuries found themselves looking over their shoulders. Slave traders changed routes, abandoned profitable systems, all because of rumors that the Empire had deployed something new, something that killed like a force of nature. In a Void Reaper compound, Marcus Chun had become both legend and enigma. His kill count, now approaching 4,000, was no longer whispered about, but studied. Training scenarios based on his techniques became standard curriculum. Young Reapers learned to think like persistence predators, to use environment as weapon, to understand that the difference between victory and defeat often lay not in strength, but in willingness to do what others wouldn't. The Watchers focused on a particular moment, a gathering in the compound's memorial hall. The Empire had lost a ship, the ESS Harmony, to pirates using stolen military technology. 300 souls lost, including civilians. The pirates had broadcast the destruction, a warning to others who might oppose them. Commander Zekthar stood before assembled Void Reapers, his massive frame radiating controlled fury. The Crimson Nebula Cartel believes themselves untouchable. Their base exists in contested space, beyond official Imperial jurisdiction. 40,000 members spread across a hidden station and fleet. The Senate refuses to authorize military action that might provoke neighboring powers. Murmurs rippled through the gathered warriors. The Watchers saw their frustration, trained to protect, yet bound by politics while criminals operated freely. However, Zekthar continued, the Senate said nothing about individual actions taken by off-duty personnel who might choose to spend their leave time in contested space. Understanding dawned on several faces. Vera and I's 6 eyes found Marcus, who stood at the back of the gathering, expression unreadable. I'm taking leave, Marcus announced quietly. 3 weeks should be sufficient. You can't assault a station alone, Yarrick protested. The young Reaper had become something of a student to Marcus, learning human combat philosophies with enthusiasm that sometimes worried his teammates. Who said anything about assault? Marcus replied, I'm just going sightseeing. Over the following days, the Watchers observed Marcus's preparations. Where others might have requisitioned heavy weapons and armor, he collected seemingly random items. industrial chemicals that, when combined, created toxins that bypass standard atmospheric filters, electronic components that could be assembled into devices that spoof security systems, clothing that would let him blend in among the criminal support staff. Vera and I found him in his quarters, assembling something that looked like mining equipment, but whose purpose she recognized with a chill. "A neutron scattering device," she said. "That's not a weapon. It's a war crime waiting to happen. Only if used against civilians or legitimate military targets," Marcus replied, making a minute adjustment. "Pirates forfeit such protections when they target civilian vessels. 40,000 of them, Marcus. Even for you, I don't need to kill 40,000. He looked up, and she saw the calculating machine behind his eyes. "I need to kill the right few hundred and let human nature, or whatever nature they have, do the rest." "What are you planning?" Marcus smiled, and it was the expression of someone who had turned death into an art form. "Did you know most criminal organizations are held together by fear rather than loyalty? Remove the source of fear, and they tear themselves apart. Much more efficient than hunting them individually." 3 days later, a maintenance worker arrived at the Crimson Nebula's hidden station. His credentials were perfect, his demeanor forgettable, his purpose seemingly mundane: fixing atmosphere processors damaged in their recent raids. The Watcher saw what the pirates missed: the way he memorized every corridor, noted every security measure, identified every key figure while appearing to focus only on his work. For a week, Marcus fixed systems during the day and studied his targets at night. The Watcher saw him building a mental map, not just of the station, but of the organization itself. Who commanded respect, who ruled through fear, who had ambitions that exceeded their position. The killing began so subtly that no one noticed at first. A mid-level enforcer who terrorized newer recruits was found dead in his quarters, apparently having choked on his own meal. A lieutenant who had bragged about killing children during raids suffered a fatal accident in a maintenance shaft. A torturer employed by the cartel's intelligence division discovered that someone had reversed the settings on his own devices while he slept, leaving him to experience every agony he had inflicted on others. Each death appeared unconnected, but the Watcher saw the pattern. Marcus was removing the cartel's most vicious members, the ones who maintained order through brutality. Without them, cracks began to form. The second week brought escalation. Entire squads of enforcers vanished during patrol. Security footage showed nothing, as if reality had simply swallowed them. Bodies were found arranged in tableaux that spoke of judgment. Criminals posed in positions mirroring their victims' final moments. Paranoia spread like a virus. Pirates accused each other of betrayal. Old grudges resurfaced. When the cartel's leadership tried to maintain order through violence, they found their enforcer ranks mysteriously depleted. Marcus moved through it all like a ghost, changing identities, always where he shouldn't be, never where anyone looked. The Watcher saw him turn the station into his hunting ground, using ventilation systems, maintenance corridors, and forgotten spaces to appear and disappear at will. The breaking point came when he reached the cartel's leadership, not to kill them, not yet, but to reveal something worse. The crime lord who ruled the Crimson Nebula, a 6-armed monstrosity named Vrax the Bloody, woke to find Marcus sitting in his private chamber, calmly reviewing financial records on Vrax's personal terminal. "Your security is worthless," Marcus said conversationally, not looking up as dozens of weapons trained on him. "I've been here for 2 weeks. I could have killed you any night." "Then why haven't you?" Vrax demanded, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. Marcus finally looked at him, and Vrax saw his own death reflected in those gray eyes. "Because I wanted you to know something first. Your organization is already dead. I've removed the keystone members who held it together through fear. Your lieutenants are questioning your strength. Your foot soldiers are deserting. Your allies are reconsidering their partnerships." He stood, ignoring the weapons, tracking his movement. "But the real reason I waited? I wanted you to understand that everything you built, every life you took, every credit you earned, it all ends because you killed the wrong ship. Those 300 souls you murdered, they've been avenged a dozen times over. And we're not done yet. Kill him, Vrax roared. His guards hesitated for exactly 1 second, long enough to wonder if they wanted to die for a leader who might not survive the night. That second was all Marcus needed. The Watchers saw time slow as Marcus moved. The neutron scattering device activated, sending everyone's nervous systems into chaos. Non-lethal at this setting, but paralyzing, Marcus flowed through the room, knife finding throats with surgical precision. Not all of them. He left half alive, paralyzed, and forced to watch. When he reached Vrax, the crime lord tried to speak, to bargain, to threaten. Marcus studied him like a specimen, then began to work. Not quickly, not mercifully, but with the patience of someone who had done this many times before. I want you to understand, Marcus said quietly as he worked, that your death means nothing to me. You're not special, not memorable, just another obstacle removed. He paused in his grisly task. But those 300 people you killed, I remember each of their names. They matter. You don't. When Vrax finally died, Marcus turned to the paralyzed survivors. Run. Tell everyone what happened here. Tell them the Empire has grown teeth. Tell them that targeting civilians brings not soldiers, but something worse. He vanished into the station's depths as alarms began to wail. Over the next 6 hours, the Crimson Nebula cartel tore itself apart. Lieutenants turned on each other, seeking to claim leadership. Foot soldiers looted what they could and fled. Allied organizations severed ties, not wanting to risk similar attention. By the time Imperial forces arrived to investigate reports of civil unrest, they found a station in ruins, thousands dead by their own hands, and the survivors begging to surrender rather than face whatever demon had been unleashed among them. Marcus's official report listed 347 confirmed kills during his vacation. The Watchers knew the real count was higher. Those who died in the subsequent infighting, those who spaced themselves rather than face judgment, those whose hearts simply stopped when they realized what hunted them. Back at the Void Reaper compound, a ceremony was held for the ESS Harmony's victims. Families of the deceased attended, finding what comfort they could in military honors and empty words about sacrifice. Marcus stood apart from the gathering, watching from shadows. A young girl, perhaps 7 years old, broke away from her mother and approached him. The Watchers recognized her from the memorial files, Sarah Voss, daughter of the Harmony's communications officer. "Are you the one?" she asked with a child's directness. "The one who hurt the bad people who hurt my daddy?" Marcus knelt to her level, his expression softer than any his teammates had seen. "Yes." "Did it help?" she asked. "Did it bring him back?" "No," Marcus admitted. "Nothing could do that. But they won't hurt anyone else's daddy." She considered this with serious eyes, then hugged him. Marcus froze and used to gentleness before carefully returning the embrace. "Thank you," she whispered, then ran back to her mother. Vera and I appeared beside him as the ceremony continued. "That's why you do it, isn't it? Not for the Empire or glory or even justice. For them, the ones who can't fight back. Someone has to be the monster," Marcus replied. "So they don't have to be." Later, in the command center, Zekthar reviewed the intelligence reports flowing in. Criminal organizations across the galaxy were restructuring, pulling back from civilian targets, focusing on less visible crimes. The murder of the ESS Harmony, meant to intimidate, had instead awakened something they weren't prepared to face. "Your human has changed the game," Thex noted, his compound eyes processing multiple data streams. "Criminals are actually afraid now." "Good," Zekthar rumbled. "Fear is a useful tool when properly applied. But what happens when he runs out of worthy targets?" Corvin asked, the question that haunted them all. The commander was quiet for a long moment. "Then, we hope he's found other purposes by then. A weapon without a target has two choices: find new targets or rust in peace. I prefer to believe Marcus Chun is smart enough to choose correctly." In his quarters, Marcus updated a private file, adding 347 names to a list that now exceeded 4,000. Each name had a story, a reason, a moment when he decided their continued existence threatened innocence. The photograph of his wife and daughter sat on his desk. Next to it, a new addition, A drawing from Sarah Voss showing a figure in black standing between monsters and a group of stick figure families. Child's art, but the message was clear. The watchers saw him trace both images with scarred fingers, saw the war inside him between the weapon he'd become and the man he was trying to remain. They saw the future spreading before him. More battles, more death, but also something else. Connections. Teammates who respected him despite their fear. Children who saw him as protector rather than killer. A place among warriors who understood that sometimes darkness was necessary to preserve light. Marcus Chun had come to the stars seeking distance from his past. Instead, he found purpose that transcended it. The galaxy's monsters had learned to fear him, but, more importantly, the galaxy's innocents had learned they weren't alone. His kill count would continue to rise. The Watchers knew this with certainty. But now it rose with purpose. Each death a statement that some lines couldn't be crossed, some innocents couldn't be harmed, without consequence. The Empire had welcomed a human fighter, expecting a soldier. They had received something far more valuable, a reminder that justice and vengeance were separated only by purpose, and that monsters could choose to hunt other monsters rather than sheep. In the depths of space, criminal organizations huddled in their strongholds, jumping at shadows, wondering if today would bring the human who killed like death itself. They had learned what Earth's children had always known. The most dangerous predator was the one that hunted not from hunger, but from principle. And Marcus Chin's principles were written in a language of 4,347 corpses and counting. The Watchers retreated to their spaces outside time, carrying with them the story of a human who had become death to prevent others from experiencing loss. They had seen the Galactic Empire change because one man refused to let evil operate without consequence. The story would continue. More battles, more death, more moments when Marcus Chun would stand between predators and prey. But for now, the galaxy was a little safer, its monsters a little warier, and its innocents a little more protected. All because the Empire had welcomed a human fighter, and finally understood what that truly meant.